Hello, my name is Frank Schorsch, and for this section of the tutorial I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how to create a leg chain and a reverse foot. So to start, I'm going to shift into our left viewport and start with the leg chain. Start with a small bone at the hips, move down into just above the pivot of the knee, and then finally down into the ankle. So now there's a slight problem with this concept art, in that the legs don't really have a bend built into them. So I'm going to go ahead and build one in manually. And the reason why you want to do this is because when you build your IK chains in, it's going to naturally pivot along however this is oriented. So if you have it kicked back, your leg is actually going to bend forward. So now that we've got the leg chain in there, we're going to go ahead and build the reverse foot. Start at the heel, go to the tips of the toes, back for the toe roll, and then back for the ball roll. So with bone edit on, I'm going to go ahead and align the end bone of the reverse foot to the end bone of the leg, and also make sure that these values are zeroed out, so my foot is completely flat. To finish it off, I'm going to go ahead and take the bone for our toe roll and duplicate it, break the link, align it with the bone for our ball roll, and rotate it into position for our toes. Then link it back in to the toe roll and create an end bone for it. Once you have your bones laid out correctly, go ahead and grab the base bone for the leg and the base bone for the foot. Shift into your front view and move them into position. Another thing that's important about your concept art is it's best to have straight legs, so you don't have to deal with perspective when you're trying to build your rig. It'll make life a lot simpler. Now that we have the bone set up for our legs, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to build the IK solver and the controller for the foot. Now that we've laid in our bones, I'm going to go ahead and create the controller and the IK system for it. So to start with, I'm going to build the controller for the foot. Usually use a simple rectangle and align it to the center of the heel. Then to make it a little bit more visually appealing, convert it into an editable spline. Select the vertices and change them to and make a little foot shape. Now this doesn't affect the functionality at all, it just makes it a lot easier to tell where your controllers are. And what they do. So there we go. Got a little bit of a foot shape going on there. If you have your controller built in, go ahead and go to your hierarchy tab, affect the pivot and align it to the heel bone. Then go ahead and take the heel bone and link it into the controller. So now before we start adding IK links and stuff like that, go ahead and select all of your bones. You're going to hold down Alt and right click to freeze the transforms. So for your IK system, start with the femur, animation IK solvers, high solver, and end with the nub bone at the end of the leg chain. You're going to take that IK, you're going to link it into the nub bone at the end of the reverse foot, go to your Motions tab, and change the parent space to IK goal. What this will do is as you rotate the foot, the knee will follow it, just like it would a natural human body. Once we build in the additional controls for the foot, we're going to add an override for the knee so that you can reposition it. To finish off the leg, go ahead and create a small dummy, align it to the top of the leg chain, and link it into that bone. The reason we're creating this dummy is because when you link bones directly into bones, sometimes it'll propagate scaling information between the bones down your links. So now that you guys have set up your foot controller and your IK, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to add sliders to your foot controller. So the first thing you'll need to do is select your foot controller, go to your modifier list, and add an attribute. Next, go to Max Script, open a Max Script, and open Foot Demo CTRL. This Max Script is for adding the sliders to your foot controller. You're also going to want to open up Max Script Listener. This will allow us to identify if the script is working correctly. So for the Max Script, everything up at the top is commented with how to add the UI elements to the attribute. So below it is going to be the parameters rollout, which is the overarching UI piece, the rollout for the foot, which contains all of the UI elements where the sliders are located. So in this top section has the internal variable name, the type of variable it is, it's a float, and what UI piece it's connected to, and its internal name. Down here we have a local variable to define these three values. It's the minimum, the maximum, and the default for the sliders. And then here we have it broken up by group, which is just a visual grouping. For the type, it's a spinner, the internal name, the visible name, and the range of the slider. And so I have these set up broken into each section. So to begin with, make sure this line is uncommented, and we're going to evaluate the script with Control E. So our listener tells us that the attribute definition has been added for controls. Now to add that definition to the attribute holder level, select this line, press Enter on your numpad. This will evaluate only this line of code, adding the sliders and UI elements to your attribute holder. Once you've added sliders to your foot controller, we can go ahead and link up the toe wiggle and the knee override to the foot controller. To do this, go ahead and select the foot controller, right-click, go to Wire Parameters, Modified Object, Attribute Holder, Foot Controls, Toes, and select the toe bone, Transform, Rotation, 0 to Rotation, Z. So we want the slider to drive the rotation. So it's a one-way arrow from the slider to the rotation, and you can hit connect. Now there's a slight problem with this. Internally, max registers rotation in radians. For every one of our slider, it does a full rotation. To go ahead and fix this, do open parentheses, deg to rad, close parentheses. And what this will do, it will transfer our degree rating in our slider to radians, and then apply the connection. So click update, and go ahead and test it again to make sure that's working correctly. Next, we're going to wire in the knee override, so right-click, Wire Parameters, Modified Object, Attribute Holder, Foot Controls, knee to the IK, Transform, Swivel Angle. And you're going to do the exact same thing here. We're going to have the slider influence the swivel angle value, and we're going to set up deg to rad to the degree to radian conversion to connect that. So now that you have the linking set up correctly, the last thing to do before we mirror these across is rename all your bones. So the easiest way to do this is to change your selection type to bone only. Select only your bones, and I'll show you a quick trick. If you go to Tools, Rename Objects, you can set a base name for all of your bones. So I always use bone underscore name of character underscore name of bone underscore the side that it's on. We're doing the right side. You can go ahead and rename all those. Now there's certain bones that I know I'm not going to be skinning to. Those are going to be the end bones. So I can select those. We're going to give them a different prefix. For my end bones, I use Terminator. And for the other bones that I know I won't be skinning to, I'll use Null. As a visual identifier for bones that I will not be skinning to, I'll recolor them red. Now that you've gone and renamed everything, you're ready to mirror across your leg. So go ahead and select your leg. Go to group, it doesn't matter what you call it since we'll be ungrouping shortly. Go to your mirror function, make sure it's set to X, copy, and mirrored IK limits. Press OK. So it's made a copy across the X-axis of your leg. To place it on that side, change the X position from a negative to a positive value, and it places it right across there. Go ahead and select both chains, select ungroup. Now if you notice, it's broken our naming convention. Quick way to fix this is if you put your side identifier tag on the end, you can select the recently ungrouped chain that you copied across. Make sure you get all of it. Go to Tools, Rename Objects, Suffix, Remove Last, so it was 3 numbers, and the wrong side tag, so it would be 4 digits. And you can change it to the correct side tag, and hit Rename. What that'll do is it'll automatically fix all of the naming conventions for that side of the leg. So now that you've mirrored across your bone chain, and recorrected the naming, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how to set up foot roll through Reaction Manager. The reason why we haven't done this yet is because when you mirror, it breaks Reaction Manager. To get to your Reaction Manager, you go to Animation, Reaction Manager, and we're going to add a new master. Master is going to be the controller for the foot, modified object, attribute holder, foot controls, foot roll. We're going to add 3 slaves, the first of which is going to be the heel, transform rotation 0, Z. The toe roll, transform rotation 0, Z. And then for the ball roll, we'll be using the ankle, transform rotation 0, Z. So whenever you add slaves, it always adds states automatically. Go ahead and delete those. and we're going to add 5 states. Next, you're going to set the values for these different states. So when the master is set to -90, when the master is set to 0, set to +45, set to +90, set to +35. Now we're going to select the values of the slaves at each one of the master values. So we'll start with the heel. And the easiest way to set these values is to go into the graph editor. So we want the heel to rotate in a positive direction at -90. And 1 on the graph is approximately 90 degrees. And that's all we need for the heel. Next, we'll go for the toe roll. So at +90, we know that we want to be all the way up on our toes, so we're going to use a -1 value. And we actually want the toe roll to start at 35 degrees, so I'm going to select the key at 45 and delete it. Then for the ankle, we're going to want it to be at its maximum at 45. So we'll set that to -1, and then we're going to delete the key at 35, so it creates a upside down triangle. So with that, you should have set up the values for your toe roll and for your foot roll. And to check this, go ahead and select your foot controller and play with the slider. So as we approach 90, he goes up on his toes. As we approach -90, he goes back on his heel. So the last thing we need to do to finish off the legs is to tie them into our primary rig. So I'm going to go ahead and unfreeze the spine chain that we built earlier. And start by selecting the foot controller, linking into the master controller, then selecting the dummy at the top of the leg chain and linking that into the pelvis. Now to make sure we've linked in everything correctly, I'm going to go ahead and grab the master controller and drag that around. Everything should come along with it. This will conclude our section on how to build a set of IK legs with reverse foot.